Dear students, it is the fourth video for week 3 and we are learning about a brief history of Pakistan. Students, I'm sure that in the previous video you have learned about the great Mughal Empire and the downfall of the Mughal Empire and the advancement and expansion of the East India Company and the British Raj in the subcontinent. As conclusion, we came to know that Muslims were destroyed by British for holding responsible of resistance against the British. And British provide opportunity to Hindus and other ethnic groups and nationalities to emerge and replace the Muslims. And as a result, Muslims became backward and they were pushed back in all the systems of the government. There happened two main problems. Muslims were expelled from the practical life, and secondly, Muslims started hating the British and they developed hate and they were not ready to accept the British as their ruler. Okay, and this was a double problem and real dilemma for the people, especially the Muslims of the subcontinent. At this very critical times, Muslims, thinkers and leaders divided into two sections. And these two sections established their own philosophy and their own monasteries and systems. This phase after 1858 till 1947 is very important from the Muslim ideology and educational reform. Muslim divided into two groups. Group one, who believed in religion, Quran and Sunnah, as the only source of their survival in subcontinent. They believed that Muslims have lost the rule and power. And now the only thing is left with them is identity, Islam. And if they fail to practice and opt Islam, they might face the circumstances like the Muslim in Spain were completely sufficed. Islam remained a dominant religion in Spain for almost 700 to 800 years. But now there are quite few Muslims left. This was the greatest fear. And the second group was the Muslims who were imagining British as a power. And they realized this, that now no resistance against British is in the benefit of the Muslims. And Muslims, rather than hating British, should involve with the British and accept them as a ruler and participate in the social and the system of the life. And the topmost personality is Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, whereas the religious institutions were Maulana Qasim Nanotwi and other great leaders. Clear? The first religious institution is called Deoband. Let's read. The failure of 1857 War of Independence had disastrous consequences for Muslims as the British placed all the responsibility of the war and agitation and events on the Muslims. The British followed deliberately a repressive policy against the Muslims. They hanged the people, killed the people, penalized them, deprived them their properties. Okay, properties and estates of those even remotely associated with the freedom fighters were confiscated. Mean something, whatever, be it was some land, house, business, or anything which was linked or was about the Muslim freedom fighters, they confiscated. Conscious efforts were made to close all avenues of honest living for them. Then they converted the Muslims into outlaws because they were unable to live and survive as a modest citizens. In this time, the religious people thought and they established an institution, this named Deoband. They were very staunch Muslims and they hated the British and they kept fighting. They believed in the superiority of Quran and Sunnah. It is Maulana Qasim Nanotwi, a Muslim scholar. He established a madrasa in Saharanpur, India, current day Saharanpur, and there was a place named Deoband. He established a little monastery, madrasa there, one student and one teacher. But later on, this is the latest building of madrasa Deoband. Later on, this madrasa established. It produced many wonderful leaders like Maulana Mahmudul Hasan, the great freedom fighter, a revolutionary person of the India, Maulana Fazl Haq, okay, Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar, and all these people, most of them were impressed from the thought of the Deoband. And Deoband thought of freedom was not limited to subcontinent. Rather, it spread throughout the Islamic world. Wherever there were colonial rule, this voice reached over there, and many, many other movements started in the other parts of Africa and other countries. They contributed a lot in translation of Quran, Hadith, Fiqh, and all others. Another notable place was Farangi Mahal, and in Rai Breli there was a madrasa established by Maulana Ahmad Raza Khan Brelvi, and this was also a very strong movement. Okay, and then there was Nidwatul Ulama in Lucknow and other areas. So they were the three main notables. Okay, now students, as a note of the people very famous in our Pakistan, two sects, दो जो बड़े मशहूर फिरके हैं, देवबंदी और बरेलवी, basically they are belong to this madrasa. Deobandis belong to Deoband madrasa and Brelvis belong to Rai Breli madrasa established by Maulana Ahmad Raza Khan Brelvi Sahab. Right? So basically they are two madrasas, they are two leaders, okay, and people who follow their thoughts are called Deobandis and Brelvis. Okay, interestingly, this Deoband madrasa, they believe in freedom, and after the partition, two madrasas were established, one Akauda Khattak in KPK, and other is in Pakistan, Koda Khatak, Jamia Sharfia, and in Karachi, Darul Uloom Karachi. They are the famous madrasas of the Deoband. And interestingly, the current day Talibans are actually the spiritual students, disciples of Deobandi line of sect. ये जो तालिबान है, who are controlling and fighting and fought against the British, and they fought against the even Russians, and currently they fought against entire world and Americans. Fine, they belong to this sect, and therefore this sect often faces criticism. They have their own contribution, clear? And current day, all the Quran and Tafsir and Hadith and many other exploration in Islamic ideology and law, they people have a very great contribution. Next is educational reforms by the second school of thought. The people who were kind and inclined towards the British. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, this gentleman, is the notable person. Clear, from he born in 1817 and survived till 1889. Clear, he was actually a scholar. Later on, he became employee of the East India Company. He traveled to England, learned their events. But in 1857, when War of Independence started, he saved the lives of many British people. And this is how he obliged the British, and British favored him a lot. Clear? He did many good things to harmonize the British-Muslim relations. He assured and confirmed British that Muslims were not the only people against them. Almost entire communities were against them. Muslims were naturally in hate with the British because they were taking power from them. And British took severe actions and deleted or annihilated Muslims, and that was also the reason he told them that British should take care of their relations. And he wrote an article named The Reasons of Mutiny in Subcontinent, Risala Asbab Pe Bagawat Hind. He realized that safety of the Muslim lay in acquisition of Western education and knowledge. He realized that the safety of Muslims of the subcontinent is only on learning the Western education and knowledge. For this purpose, he founded a college at Aligarh, clear, on the British lines and philosophy. And this is the first place where the Muslims were given the Western education. Anglo-Mohammedan Educational Conference, he in 1886 organized Anglo-Mohammedan Educational Conference, in which he invited the scholars from all over India and briefed them about the changing circumstances and asked them to educate their children, their followers, and ask them to learn the modern education so that they become the counterpart in the British government. He averse to the idea of participation by the Muslims in any organized political activity, which he feared might revive British hostility towards them. At the time in 1886, I told you, the Indian National Congress was being formed by the A.O. Hume, a civil servant of India, British national. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan were against this idea that Muslims should not participate in the political system. Rather, they should focus on education, social norms, and self revival. And he was feared that if the Muslims once again started taking part in political systems, and obviously in political system there is always tension, fighting, and quarrel, litigation, and he was feared that British may once again become dangerous for the Muslims, and Muslims may have to face dire circumstances. The students, apart from these systems, Hindus were also leading many hostile movements. Shuddhi and Shantan were the two main movements in which they were force converting the Muslims and other nationalities into Hindus. And they were also waging the ideological war against the Muslims. And same thing was being done by the British missionaries, Western missionaries. They were establishing their schools and cathedrals, and they were promoting their ideas, and that was another front for the Muslims to fight. And that was a very, crunchy time, a very time of very delicacies where the Muslim had to face. Okay, in nutshell, both these religious reforms, religious people and the people who were tender or inclined towards British education, modern education, they both had great contributions. One I'd say ideologically, another saved the Muslim from education point of view. And the contribution of these, all the people came, and the fruits of their vision came in Pakistan movement when both these people together worked under the on the stage of Muslim League under the leadership of Qaid Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and others, and finally Pakistan came into being. The students, in the end of this very, very long discussion, I've come to know, and I want to recap all the concepts, that the areas in Pakistan are the house of many ancient, wonderful civilizations, and they are still a source of learning. Secondly, Muslim rule in subcontinent brought many wonderful changes in the lives of people, their manners, culture, system of government, equality, and justice. But when Muslims became quarrelsome and differences emerged among themselves, they became weak, and the other powers emerged. But unfortunately, Marathas, Muslims, Sikh, and other nations kept fighting between them, and the cunning English took control of everyone, and they became the rulers of this vast continent. Okay, and same thing continued. They ruled from 1857. Their rule actually starts from 1767 and ends on 1947. Okay, it is almost 200 years, but the solid rule they did is 100 years on the complete entire India. All the differences, problems, and issues we are facing within the Muslims in our political system with other nations like Hindu, Sikhs, and others, they are all are inherited, and they have the roots back in history. Thank you very much.